Jane Weru, urban land specialist. Welcome to the JSO interview.
Thank you very much.
You are the executive director of an entity called Akiba Mashinani Trust. Tell us more.
Akiba Mashinani Trust is a trust that works with the urban poor. And basically what we do is that we work with them to get them organized into saving schemes. And then we encourage them to save on a daily basis, because that is how the poor within the city earn their incomes. They earn their incomes through selling skumawiki, cabbage on the street. And that's, so if you wait until the end of the month for them to have something to save, they will not have anything to save. So we encourage them to save their money as they get it. And once they have saved, we then work with them to begin to realize their dreams. And almost all the urban poor have a dream of having somewhere decent to live. So we have had groups that have saved money and come together to buy land. So we have groups in Mukuru, we have groups in Madare who have bought considerable acreage of land. We have a group that has bought 23 acres in Mukuru for about $1 million from their daily savings. So that's basically what we do.
The image that you use there of buying land puts me in mind of the recent news, and we see, perhaps not urban, but an image of the president coming to placate people who had just only so many days before their property was razed to the ground. And significantly, the property was razed to the ground with the defense, the police, sort of with an advanced group of people wielding pangas and machetes. In other words, before you get to people having $1 million to buy their 23 acres in Madari, Gorogosho, Kibera, slums, it seems to me that their arch enemy is the state itself, waiting peacefully for the president to come and say everything will be all right tomorrow.
Yes, I think over the years the state has been the major enemy. Because, for instance, if I just can give you an example of Mukuru, a lot of Mukuru is actually owned by private individuals. And the land there was given out by the state. It was initially state land, and it was given to the rich and powerful. And for most instances, it was given for the purposes of developing industry so that could create employment. But the people who got this land never developed it. They just sat on it, they used it for speculation. And because of the pressure of land within the city, this land was eventually occupied by slum settlements. And in the last few years, we've been seeing a spate of evictions, threatened evictions and burnings, because now the value of the land has escalated. You find an acre probably costs about 40 million. And the big tycoons now want their land back, and they're using basically the power of the state. So
I'm going back to you, Jane, and saying perhaps they'll never be able to buy the land at 40 million because they'll just never be able to raise that much money as a concerted effort. So the poor are hopeless forever and a day.
It would look like that, John, but I think there is hope in the new constitution, because under the new constitution, the law actually says that it is time to begin to investigate these titles and to ask the question, how were they given? Were they given properly? Were they legitimate grants, or were they given illegally? And in almost all instances, you find that the law that was supposed to be applied then was not applied. For instance, government land was supposed to have been sold by public auction. It never was. And the conditions within the title clearly stipulated that if you did not develop, if you were given the land to put up an industry and you never did, then the government was supposed to come in and take it back and use it for a public purpose, because it is not right for you to speculate and benefit from a public good.
The whole notion of righting the wrongs of the past must be a complicated business. Let's look at a place like Kibera in times past, Kibra in the present day. There's this whole idea of this was land in the popular mythology that belonged to the Nubian people, and it was somehow theirs. So many years later, fast forward, it doesn't belong to the Nubians. We find the MP for the region at the time, I think it was our ex-Prime Minister, saying we're going to have a slum upgrading program. The slums are upgraded, nice houses are built, rich people buy them, speculate once again. So I'm still saying to you, it's a hopeless case for the poor.
It would seem, but I think there is a political will and there is a deep thirst by the poor for this situation to change. So, for instance, right now we have the National Land Commission, and one of its mandates is to actually investigate all these titles that were given. So the National Land Commission will sit down and look and find out, were these titles regularly given or were they irregularly given?
But I'm trying to suggest that we know they were irregularly given.
Yes.
I mean, we know the answer before we spend years with commissions trying to get to the bottom of things.
Yes.
Isn't the intelligent person saying that an abuse has been exercised? The idea is, how are we going to right it? Because I think you suggested that we're dealing with powerful individuals here.
Yes, but I think the public will, and just the existence of the state. We, as the existence of the state of Kenya as a nation, I think is called to question if we cannot begin to deal with these issues, because we cannot have peace under these circumstances. Because we're looking at a situation where you have about 65% of the people of the city living on 1% of the total land area. So we have squeezed people into such a small space that we are looking at the face of an upheaval. And so we must begin to address, and I begin to feel that within the government there is political will. There is a realization that the situation cannot last forever, and that we must take action before things go up in flames.
But even as the numbers increase, there's also this whole notion of the exodus. More people are coming to find the city paved with gold, the land of opportunity. You're telling me that a commission of so many people is going to be up to the task of managing this monumental problem?
It's not just the commission. I think it's basically also the county governments. Because right now, under the new constitution, the county governments have the power to hold land within their counties on behalf of communities, especially community lands. And I think with the increase of people moving into urban areas, I think right now we're seeing the creation of urban centers, county centers. And I think probably in the coming years, we'll see less and less people coming to Nairobi and more cities coming up around the country.
Opposition will persist because, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I came across this phrase, the idea of adverse possession. And for me, adverse possession, my understanding is that if you stay there long enough, it becomes yours. I think the period is 20 years. We're now 50 years old this year. So is it too layman a perception to say the urban poor, certain generations own the land anyway? It's there simply by virtue of the fact that they've been there for 20 years plus.
Yes, ideally that would be the position, but ideally when you want to put in the adverse possession to take effect, you, the person who's claiming adverse possession, must go to court and get that order in your favor. So it is not an automatic right. It is something that you must seek out. So
legal fees are of their nature expensive.
Yes.
Does, for example, Akiba come in and give free legal services? Because I'm saying that the enemy could be a sort of David and Goliath situation, and David is never going to win because Goliath is so damn huge.
Yeah, Goliath is huge, but I think that David is an army of small ants. You're looking at an army of little ants, but there are many, and I think they have the capacity to make a change. I do not believe that Goliath is so invincible that nothing can bring him down, because our constitution is a reflection of the might of the many ants. Goliath would not have wanted titles to be investigated, and yet that provision is in our constitution today, because we realized we could not exist as a people unless we began to address the fundamental issues that plague our country. And one of them is inequality and equity, the issues of equity and inequality. And they are at the foundation of our own constitution. So if you read our constitution, you will always come across that the principles of equity and equality must be taken into consideration in the next 50 years of our life as a nation.
But our constitution, as beguiling and as it is, does not have, to my reading,
yes.
You've said 65% in 1%, all these alarming, it's not addressed in the Constitution. The constitutional fathers and mothers never set provisions that deal with this. So we hear of an eviction bill in the same way that we hear of other bills that are offering, the marriage bill. What's going to be in the eviction bill?
The eviction bill just sets the procedures that should be undertaken before an eviction takes place. So that, for instance, right now we are prospecting and hoping that we can get oil and gas in the northern part of our country. A lot of that area, a lot of that land is not adjudicated. It's still in the hands of the state, or probably in the hands of the community, that particular county governments, ideally. So what would happen in past days is that the state would allocate that land and people would begin to speculate in advance. So we are saying that these things under the new constitutions change. It is not in the hands, the community lands such as those that are held in the north, ideally should not be in the hands of the national government to give as they please.